Hi, everyone, and good Tuesday. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us next to the last day of 2014. Oh, how it aches me to think it, much less say it. So glad you could join us for tonight's program as we're winding down this year. A couple of things on that note. I'll be with you on New Year's Eve to some degree, not as the clock strikes 12, but I'm thinking quite possibly for the first time in 16 years. And there's a couple of mitigating factors in that. Our initial plans were, as we have, I think, forever taken off New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, were to do so again this year. But with it falling right in the middle of the week, of course, that also has some implications on it. But more so is the fact that a story that we're working on for tomorrow night's program that just couldn't simply, physically, on my part, have been put together for tonight's program. Even though it's been one of those days where, in addition to working on today's show, I've also been looking ahead and working on tomorrow night's, and it's when we'll be talking with several individuals as they share some thoughts and reminisce on the life of Tim Bostic, either as a friend, as a coach, as a newspaper editor, member of the family, community, as the mayor, what have you. But several folks have expressed their interest in sharing a few thoughts, and we've been sitting down with those today and will be tomorrow. And that will be a story that sadly we'll go out on this year. Most often at the end of each year we try to go out and reflect on the years past. Tomorrow night we'll do it by reflecting on a person who's passed but left a great legacy on Sagersville, Magoffin County. More on Tim Bostic tomorrow. I also do have some information in regards to his funeral service announcements on tonight's program, and I'll get to that in just a few moments. Doesn't go to say that we don't have programming for this evening. One of our top headlines will include a long list of documented details and reasons that a federal prosecutor is requesting a much longer prison sentence for Morgan County Judge Executive Tim Conley. I'll tell you about the papers that were filed yesterday and what they entail, and some other news and information. Numbers in the past few weeks have started to reflect that fewer people, for the most part, a continuing welcome trend for the past many years, had died on Kentucky's roadways this year as compared to last. However, those numbers and those families' lives affected by several tragic accidents and crashes over just the past few days alone will go a long way toward changing that, sadly. Just to kind of reflect and then give you some new information as well. As I told you last night, a single fatality in Wolfe County this past Friday night. That was Linda Ring of Sassafras, who was driving her vehicle when she lost control and that car overturned. Her son, James L. Sherrill, who was 42, was ejected from the vehicle and pronounced dead at the scene. Now that was Friday. Saturday night, 2 people have died as a result of a crash. A second person dying after a crash, a fiery collision on I-75 in Madison County near Richmond, identified as 38-year-old Melissa Mead, deceased as of today. Saturday night, her car crashed into another vehicle operated by 41-year-old Christopher Truesdale. He died at the UK Medical Center. And then one fatality in Floyd County Sunday night. As I told you last night, 67-year-old Jane Gross of High Hat lost control of her car and struck another vehicle while traveling on Kentucky 122. Wet roads appear to have been a possible mitigating factor. In Whitley County, yesterday morning, Charles McIntosh, 20 years of age, was pronounced dead on Kentucky 122. I believe it was Kentucky 92, my apologies. He was driving east on Route 92 in his Honda Civic. He lost control in a curve, struck another Honda Civic head-on, driven by McIntosh, who has now been pronounced dead of those injuries he sustained in that crash. One from South Shore, this was yesterday afternoon. A man died after a crash involving an SUV and an 18-wheeler on US 23. 57-year-old Kendall Pratt pulled in front of that 18-wheeler, has since died from his injuries. Another fatal collision in eastern Kentucky today in Letcher County. 42-year-old Kevin Stamper of Heyman died after a crash on US 119 in Letcher County. It happened this morning. Fatigue cited as a possible factor into that collision. And we now have the identity of those 2 who were killed in yesterday's collision between a passenger car and an ambulance in Clark County on the Mountain Parkway. The coroner there has identified the deceased, the victims, as 29-year-old Rebecca Talby and 38-year-old Marshall Brian Craig Craig, we know, was a volunteer firefighter in Bath County. Taubby, we now know through family statements, was 7 months pregnant at the time of her death yesterday. An autopsy was also performed on Marshall because they thought he may have experienced some sort of a medical emergency which may have caused his car to just careen off of his direction of travel across the center line and into the path of that oncoming ambulance, where both of the employees did survive. So we have a little time left in this year. We're hopeful that it will not be as tragic as the past few days have been. 8 fatalities on Kentucky's roads at least, and that's if I'm not misadding or have left one out of my reporting, since just this past Friday night. Stay tuned. When I come back, a couple of elected officials in Kentucky have trial dates coming up. One has been postponed, and the other one is facing possibly more jail time if a federal prosecutor has his way. We'll go into the case of Tim Connolly and that of Keith Hall in just a moment. Some more details tonight on future court dates for individuals, 2 elected officials, mind you, one facing sentencing, one facing trial. We'll begin with the latter, where a federal judge has granted a motion which was filed to postpone the trial date of State Representative Keith Hall of Phelps. State Representative Keith Hall was indicted on charges of bribery in U.S. District Court, facing up to 10 years in prison if he's found guilty. Meanwhile, a mine inspector by the name of 54-year-old Kelly Shortridge was also indicted on charges of bribery, extortion, and then lying to federal authorities as they conducted their investigation about his involvement in an alleged scheme. Now, this all goes back to Hall reportedly paying Shortridge more than $46,000 to the mine inspector from May of 2009 through December of 2010 to ignore repeated violations at Hall's Pike County surface coal mines. Hall's trial was set to begin shortly after the first of the year on January the 5th. However, a motion by defense attorneys indicates that they have requested a delay in the trial, allowing attorneys more time to prepare documentation and evidence therein. His trial has now been moved from January the 5th through April the 13th. And in the case of Tim Connolly, who is awaiting sentencing formally set for January the 6th, the federal prosecutor in the case has now filed the appropriate paperwork and measures in a motion just yesterday requesting a much greater sentence for the Morgan County Judge Executive, and those papers detail the reasons why. The U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Kentucky cites records a motion filed for upward departure or upward variance from the guidelines. For the reasons stated therein, the United States has respectfully requested the court to impose a sentence that includes a far greater term of imprisonment. Now, these documents, as you'll see in part, outline that on August the 26th of this year, mind you, Timothy Connolly in 2014 pleaded guilty to 1 count of mail fraud out of 6 counts that he was facing. The Morgan County Judge Executive admitting therein that he devised a long-running scheme to defraud his constituents of his own honest services, admitting that he executed this scheme by rigging bids to ensure that a construction company, PBTHNOJJ, a company owned by Kenneth and Ruth Gamble of Sagersville here in McGoffin County, was awarded contracts for the construction of county bridges. Connolly admitting that he directed Gamble to deliver kickbacks back to him from the proceeds of these contracts. Now, also, some new information detailed herein that I haven't seen before. It details the extent of the scheme that Connolly masterminded, saying that Connolly ensured the Gamble's company would receive contracts to build at least 14 different bridges for Morgan County between 2009 and 2013. He did this through manipulation of the bid process, and they cite some examples. For example, in May of 2013, it says that Connolly opened 3 sets of sealed bids outside of public view and then altered the Gamble's Construction Company's bid as follows. You'll see here towards the bottom part of your screen, it has an original bid from the Gamble's company, then it has the altered bid amount, and then the competitor's bid. For example, for a bridge on Rocky Branch, a competitor bid $35,000, while the Gamble's company bid $38,900. But upon opening the bids, Connolly went in and changed that from $38,900 to $34,900, $100 below the closest competitor. For a bridge on Gordon Ford, a $70,000 bid by a competitor was met by an altered bid of $61,900
for the Gambles bid, even though the Gambles had already submitted a bid far less at $41,900. They would have received the lowest bid. However, in this case, he altered the bid and raised it $20,000, but still lower than the closest competitor, thus taking more money from the county. And then in another case, a bid of $39,000 by a competitor was met by an altered bid for the Gambles Company of $38,900. And by doing this, he simultaneously guaranteed that the construction company was the low bidder for each and every bridge. This motion also outlines how the construction company was used as a conduit, and Connally thus transferred money from the public fiscal to his own pockets. Between 2009 and 2012, he awarded the construction company of the Gambles contracts to build at least 8 bridges and demanded about $5,000 in cash per bridge. But then he upped his demands a little later in 2012 and 2013 in exchange for contracts to build at least 6 bridges, including the 3 that I just outlined above. Connally demanded about $15,000 in cash per bridge and did get it. All told, between 2009 and 2013, they say he got at least $130,000 in kickbacks as part of the scheme. So all of this together, taken into consideration by the federal authorities and used to calculate a sentencing guideline, comes to 70 to 87 months in prison, based on an offense level, and it's a chart that they use, of 27 and a criminal history category of 1. Now, that includes, among other things, a 2-level enhancement because the case involved more than one bribe, a 10-level enhancement based on a number of kickbacks, more than one and many, actually, and a 4-level enhancement because he was a public official. And the United States concurs with that calculation, saying that that's what it comes out to being, 70 to 87 months. However, the United States is moving for the court to issue an upward departure based on Connally's systematic, pervasive corruption of his government office and the loss in confidence in government that potentially resulted from it. Now the United States says it's respectfully seeking a 5-level upward departure to an offense level of 32. The guideline range for imprisonment for a level 32 with a criminal history category of 1 would rather be 121 to 151 months. So the United States is respectfully requesting a sentencing now of 136 months to be imposed, rather than a range of 70 to 87. Also, in part of that request, it says that Connally's history and characteristics don't give reason for any leniency, and to be sure that there are some mitigating qualities here, it says that Connally did achieve during his tenure as Morgan County Judge Executive some good qualities, from working alongside first responders in the aftermath of the tornado to raising funds and coordinating the county's rebuilding effort. Yet it says his duplicity in simultaneously extorting kickbacks can't be ignored, and it says that while he's admitted that his conduct violates federal law, he doesn't appear to appreciate its fundamental wrongfulness. Adding that at his August 26th plea hearing, for instance, Connally accepted responsibility for taking money from Kenneth Gamble. He then began to offer excuses, though, attempting to justify his actions, claiming that he accepted money so he could give it to the people in need. And then scarcely 2 weeks later, he stood by as a member of his family, published a letter in the local newspaper repeating the same excuses for Connally's conduct. It has an example of the letter to that paper here with me, but nevertheless, we'll go on. Connally displayed it as a failure or a refusal to grasp the seriousness of his offense in other ways after his guilty plea, and in spite of his admission to a crime that involved abuse of public office, he refused to resign from that office and even sought re-election, culminating in the publication of an October 30th advertisement in which his wife and mother both urged Morgan County voters to cast their ballots for him. Connally lost that election, but as of date of this filing, it says he remains still today, until the new judge executive is sworn in, as Morgan County Judge Executive, and has continued to draw his taxpayer-funded salary ever since, and I believe that's an estimated $80,000 a year.
More news and information right now at tonight's community calendar, brought to you by McGoffin Farm Bureau.
Just in from our friends at Kearney Free Will Baptist, the church is having night watch services tomorrow, December the 31st, obviously, beginning at 8 p.m. And Pastor Butch Whitaker and everyone at Kearney Free Will invite you to attend. And they're also telling me they're going to be picking and grinning this first Saturday of 2015. This Saturday the 3rd at 7 p.m. They'll be picking and grinning over at Kearney Free Will Baptist. And this is your invitation to join them. A reminder from the Sayersville City Hall: is that tomorrow is the last day to pay your city taxes at face value. You've got until close of operation tomorrow at 4 o'clock down at Sayersville City Hall, after which a 10% penalty will be added to all Sayersville City taxes. Turning to local funeral service announcements from the Sayersville Funeral Home, Ella Faith Sluss, infant daughter of Tim and Carla Collett Sluss of Sayersville, passed away on Saturday. Those left to mourn include her parents, Tim and Carla Collett Sluss of Sayersville, as well as sisters Katie Sluss, Emily Sluss, and Kenley Sluss, all of Sayersville, as well as a host of friends and family services to be held in little Ella Faith Sluss's honor are set for tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock from the Sayersville Funeral Home. And I have spoken with Carol Bostic, and we'll have more tomorrow, but services have been set for Saturday for Tim Bostic. They're bringing him back to McGoffin County for services and to be honored. The McGoffin County Funeral Home is handling arrangements, and services will be Saturday. The exact time is not set. Also, visitation will be this Friday as well, and the exact time had not been finalized. They were still waiting members of the family to come in and make all the final arrangements, but visitation will start sometime Friday, services sometime Saturday, and I'll have more for you on that note on tomorrow's program. I'll be right back. A few quick notes before we get into your Licking Valley RECC forecast. As I mentioned earlier at the top of the program, been working today, and as I will be tomorrow on tomorrow night's program. We'll have programming for you on New Year's Eve. Sadly, it's going to be not just saying goodbye to 2014, but we'll be saying goodbye to former Sayersville mayor, longtime coach, and he had so many other hats that we can't talk about tonight, but we'll try to cover tomorrow night. Tim Bostic, and a few special interviews with some folks who've asked to share their thoughts on his passing and his time with us. So we'll have that story and some other news tomorrow. We hope to see you then. In closing tonight, we started off at 23, hit 40, and that was it. And we'll see under clear skies tonight. Those clear skies have an effect with a low of 20 degrees under mostly clear skies. Tomorrow, just above freezing. The sunshine, kind of like today, will be a bit of a falsehood. It will look nice from the inside looking out. Won't feel so great. 33, and check out tomorrow night's low. Under those mostly clear skies, those two having an effect in clearing the way for temperatures to fall to the low teens, around 11, 12 degrees for tomorrow night's low on New Year's Eve. New Year's Day, the first day of 2015, starts off on a wintry note, as should. A high of only 38 degrees with sunshine, mind you. Clear and bright, but 38 degrees with a low in the 20s for nighttime lows. And the first day of 2015, we'll see some clouds that night and some light winds, but nothing to speak of really in the weather department except for the cold, which is going to hang on. Friday, 41 and mostly cloudy, a low of 33. Friday looks to be the next weather maker as far as precipitation is concerned. In fact, a 30% of precipitation starting us off, but building to about 50 to 60% by Friday night. We could see a little rain, a little snow, a little freezing rain, depending on time and temperature, and that continuing into your Saturday. Temperatures will warm up, and with that, we'll continue to see moisture and rain likely across the board Saturday. The first weekend of 2015 looks to be a wet one, albeit a little bit warm, but 52 and rainy on your Saturday. And Sunday, more precipitation hanging around, temperatures falling back to about 46, and the chances of precipitation waning down to about 20 by Sunday evening. We'll start off the first Monday of 2015, mostly sunny and 36 degrees of next week, and on a winter note possibly from there, but I'll talk more about that later when I see you back here next time for more of Your News Today. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow night, New Year's Eve, 2014. Good night.